Welcome to Realcast, the weekly roundup of the real asset markets. I'm joined this week by Nicole Dines and Paul Strome. And a reminder, of course, we're now 100 days into the war with Ukraine, and a lot of the impacts of that also discussed in a number of interviews, including with Tina Fordham from the Euryale conference. So please do look at those on the website. Some really interesting insights there. Nicole, what have you been following?
Well, there have been some interesting news in three sectors which we've been following constantly on at Real Asset Media. Fast-growing sector, life sciences, student housing and healthcare. On the student housing front, Xior Student Housing, which has consolidated its position as the biggest provider of PBSA in continental Europe, acquiring all the assets of Basecamp for a massive 939 million euros. It's a portfolio of 11 prime assets, over 5,000 units in 4 countries, Germany, Denmark, Sweden, and Poland. And it creates, as I was saying, continental Europe's largest student accommodation provider, a platform which focuses on, they call it inspiring places, all sort of environmentally sustainable buildings. They're all newly built or about to be completed. So very much sort of new and up to, state of the art. And it emphasizes this consolidation trend in the sector. Xior now has over 26,000 units and a presence in 43 university towns in Europe. It seems the big is definitely better in that sector. The other sector I was mentioning is life sciences, which, as we've talked about many times, this has a fast-growing sector. And in Germany, in particular, there's a brand new platform which is called IQ Spaces, which has been just founded this week. It's a sort of specialized platform launched to provide modern lab and research spaces to accommodate this fast-growing sector. They've already have 3 projects in Potsdam and Munich, but a big pipeline of other projects ahead. And it's been founded by Stone Cup Partners. They say that the 21st century will be characterized by the biotechnological revolution, as they call it, and the life science megatrend. And they see more and more demand for that sector in the sort of lab and research area. So certainly more news to come in that sector ahead. And as I was mentioning, healthcare, Italian asset manager Kryalos has signed a deal with Euryale, which is a French senior living and nursing home specialist, for a 300 million euro healthcare fund that will target assets, especially in northern Italy. Now, Italy, as we know, has got one of the fastest aging population in the world. It's second only to Japan, yet it's got a very, very low provision rate. There's 1.8 places for every 100 people over 65, compared to a European average of 5. So huge demand ahead, and the joint venture has already identified a substantial sort of pipeline of investment. And Paolo Botelli, the CEO of Kryalos, said that it was an opportunity for them to enter a market that needs it, a very neglected market, to make a significant impact, for the company to have a big role, but also, as he said, to make a big contribution to society. And healthcare was also one of the themes of real asset impact. And Juergen Fenk, the CEO of Primonial REM, emphasized how he focuses on the social aspect of ESG, not just so the impact on workers, on the community, on society at large, not just because it's the right thing to do, but also because it's what investors want. Not just the big institutions that he deals with, but also retail investors seem to be more and more interested in that aspect. Of course, Primonial REM is the biggest healthcare real estate manager in Europe, with over 10 billion euros of assets under management and a presence in 7 countries. And Fenk, since he's taken over as CEO, has very much focused on the ESG aspect, which he says, at every level, corporate level, asset level, and fund level. And he says it's not marketing, it's a real conviction, because he said a better built environment is a key to a better world.
Yeah, I think that was really interesting. And that focus on healthcare, obviously, we've been seeing increasingly over the past couple of years. And I noticed as well La Francaise making a debut outside of the French markets and selecting Dublin for that debut. So just interesting as well to see some of those players beginning to move outside of their different regional markets as well. Paul, what have you been watching?
This week we've learned that Commerce Real has acquired a large office building in Washington, D.C., a 25,500 square metre building. That's over 274,000 square feet for the open-ended fund House Invest. The building's located in the so-called Golden Triangle at the heart of Washington, D.C.'s central business district, and it's a building that was completed in 2019 and is 82% let. It was a joint venture between a local developer and Canada Pension Plan Investment Board. We don't yet know the price that was paid. It was a deal that was hinted at when I spoke to Commerce Real's CEO Henning Koch for the Real Asset Insight magazine CEO interview spot a few weeks ago. And he told me about his first year in the job, which has for obvious external reasons, had its challenges, although interesting, not all of the consequences of what has been going on in the world have been negative for him. He talked in particular about properties now demonstrable strength as a hedge against inflation, which is perhaps one of the reasons that fund closings that have occurred and recently announced over the last week have done so well. For instance, a group of 15 European institutional investors has invested 900 million by first close of the Heinz European Value Fund 3 announced this week. The fund now stands at about 60% of its 1.5 billion equity target. And Heinz says there'll be further closings this year and early 2023 as required. I think so far it's been European investors. They expect US, Asian and Middle Eastern investors to join for subsequent closings. HEVF3's target will make it the largest fund in the series so far. Nuveen Real Estate has also completed a first close of its fourth debt strategy in the European Commercial Real Estate Debt Series. It secured about 150 million in initial commitments, and the strategy is targeting a total raise of 500 million. Nuveen's head of commercial real estate debt for Europe, Christian Janssen, said that post-GFC retrenchment of traditional bank lenders and the impact of the coronavirus pandemic has created a significant opportunity for non-bank lenders. And in the UK, Home REIT, which funds the acquisition and creation of accommodation for homeless people in the UK, raised around £263 million through what they described as a significantly oversubscribed placing. Owing to the level of demand, the board raised the target from 150 million, but investor demand still exceeded the new maximum. It's interesting that it's not just the multifamily rented property that's attracting investors, although the home REIT model is to let to registered charities, community and interest companies and other regulated organisations, which presumably provides the security of income flow for them. The REIT's portfolio was last valued at £713 million. It's got 8,556 beds for homeless people, 28 tenants across England.
We've been watching that for a little while, and I think it's a really interesting business there. I was also interested in what you were saying around the debt side, because certainly increasingly in the discussions I've been having around the market, that there's an awful lot of interest and capital currently being raised for debt strategies, particularly as well for the transition to sustainability. I had a really interesting interview as well with Brian Klinsiek, head of European Research and Global Portfolio Strategies at LaSalle Investment Management. You can watch that in full on the website, but really interesting views there on inflation, that Brian's view was inflation may well be peaking, and that actually encouragingly that there were signs of that being passed through into rents, which of course is one of the key aspects for real estate. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for watching us, and look forward to seeing you next week for our regular roundup of the real asset markets.